I was sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, the kind of thick brown carpet that had seen better days, cutting out a page from the toy section of the JCPenney Christmas catalog. I was using those orange-handled kitchen scissors, the ones that were always a little too dull from slicing bread bags and opening stubborn tape. The little radio on the kitchen counter was playing Waiting for a Girl Like You by Foreigner, and my mom was humming along while stirring a pot of oatmeal made with carnation milk. It was Monday morning, December 7th, 1981, but it felt like Christmas Eve. That strange mix of chill and excitement in the air. You remember that feeling? The house smelled like a blend of artificial pine, cinnamon coffee, and a touch of must coming up from the basement. The old furnace was groaning through its usual cycle, and the Zenith tube TV in the corner, the one with the clicky channel dial, let out a low hiss of morning cartoons. I think Tom and Jerry was on, but the volume was off. My dad was on a kick about saving electricity, though no one really knew if muting the TV helped with that. Our Christmas tree was fake, came from a box we'd had since the Montgomery Ward days, and every year it looked a little less magical. But it was there, just like always, with the crooked angel up top and those old plastic ornaments that only looked like glass. And underneath, nothing. Not yet. Just a red polka dot blanket my grandma stitched back in the 60s, now a little faded and fuzzy. It bugged me. I mean, in a kid's brain, a Christmas tree without presents is like Jell-O without flavor. It exists. But what's the point? That's when Mom had the idea. One of those weird but somehow genius mom ideas. Instead of buying wrapping paper this year, she said, we'll use pages from the catalog. She said it with that kind of cheer only moms on a budget can pull off. It's colorful, it's festive, and it's full of Christmas spirit. And we believed her. Because back then anything our mom said just was the way. My older sister grabbed her little travel hair dryer, the one she took to the roller rink, and used it to warm up the folds in the paper so they wouldn't tear. We spread out on the floor with pages from every section. Toys, kids' clothes, Casio watches, even that Darth Vader sweatshirt Jimmy from next door wore almost every single day. With each careful fold, using a ruler from our school pencil box, it felt like we were wrapping presents straight out of Saks Fifth Avenue. Sure, deep down we knew it was all smoke and mirrors. But somehow, wrapping a bar of Kamei soap in an image of the Barbie dream house made that little gift feel fancy. Like it belonged in the front window of the mall under spotlights and fake snow. Outside, the sky was a flat gray, stuck somewhere between snow and drizzle. We kept peeking out the window, hoping to see the mail truck rounding the corner, because we had mailed our letters to Santa the week after Thanksgiving, with stamps and everything. Maybe he'll write back this year, my little brother said, full of that hopeful sparkle only a kid in 1981 could still have. On the radio, Casey Kasem was counting down the top 40. He hit number 3, Olivia Newton-John with Physical. And there I was, 8 years old, not having a clue what that song really meant, dancing around holding a page with a bright green Huffy bike on it. The one I knew I wouldn't get, but it made the perfect wrap for the bottle of bubble solution we'd picked out for our cousin at Woolworth's. Somewhere between the dancing and folding, Mom said something that stuck in my heart like one of those felt ornaments. A gift looks beautiful not because of what's inside, but because of what we felt making it. She wasn't trying to be deep. She was just tired, wearing a faded floral apron with glue stick all over her fingers. But to me, she may as well have written a new verse of scripture. We spent the whole morning in our little homemade gift wrap factory. Scissors, tape, catalog pages, and laughter. And that smell of oatmeal, which to this day I've never smelled quite the same again. There was magic in the ordinary back then, something we didn't recognize until long after it was gone. And you? Ever wrapped a gift with something that wasn't really meant to be gift wrap? Ever made something feel fancy with nothing but imagination and a couple pages from a catalog? Tell me. I know we weren't the only ones. The only thing breaking the rhythm of our little Christmas gift wrapping factory was the arguing over the Scotch tape. We had one roll. Just one. It lived in that yellow plastic dispenser with the metal teeth that always cut your finger before it cut the tape, and it became the most fought-over item in the house that morning. "You already used 3 whole pieces for 1 bar of soap, Lisa," my little brother shouted. "Because I want it to be sealed tight. Yours looks like a crumpled sandwich," she snapped back with the flair of someone who always swore she'd be a fashion designer and ended up working the DMV desk, bless her heart. Then came Mom, with that voice only 1980s moms had. Not loud, but enough to stop your blood cold. Do you want me to put everything back in the closet and cancel Christmas this year? Because I will. Silence. Even the radio seemed to hush. And just like that, we were all back to cutting, folding, and taping in peace. At least for 5 minutes, until someone let out a fart and the whole room fell apart laughing again. The funny thing was, even with catalog pages, dollar store presents, and Cold Wars over tape, we felt rich. Truly. There was something about turning not enough into plenty that made you feel like you had a secret superpower. The JCPenney catalog became gold in our hands. Too pretty to just flip through and toss. It was wish book, inspiration, and now, gift wrap. Then came the climax of the whole morning, placing the presents under the tree. One by one, we slid the gifts into place, each one wrapped in glossy pages showing She-Ra dolls, Hot Wheels tracks, Levi's jeans, or those gift sets with the watch and fake leather wallet that always said, "Gifts for Dad and Uncles." Each package felt like a tiny capsule of joy, as if the catalog itself had whispered, "Here, let me help." That tree, which just an hour before had looked so bare and defeated, now glowed with life. It was full of color, full of stories. We knew every page we used. This one's from the Baby Skates page and the doll we never got. This one's from the Walkman ad Gary got jealous about last year. These weren't just presents. They were scrapbook memories in 3D. I remember standing there, arms crossed, looking at the tree like we'd just pulled off a miracle. Dad walked in from his night shift just as we were finishing up. He stood there, hands on his hips, rubbing his temple like he always did when he was surprised but didn't want to show it. "You wrapped all that with the magazines?" "The JCPenney catalog, Dad," I said proudly. He squinted, then chuckled. "Shoot, better than the Sears stuff, I'll tell you that." And in that moment I realized he wasn't teasing us, he meant it. He saw what we saw. Something homemade, yes, but beautiful in its own scrappy way. Did your family ever do that? Wrap things in newspaper? Put toys in old cereal boxes just to keep the surprise? Ever decorate with tinfoil and pine cones because that's all there was? I'd love to hear about it. Because I know we weren't the only ones turning scraps into sparkle. That December morning in 1981 was the first time I really got it. That Christmas wasn't about what you got. It was about what you made. And somehow, wrapping that bar of soap in Barbie's smile made it feel like a Tiffany bracelet. To this day, whenever I see old catalog pages, those overlit photos of kids in matching red and green striped sweaters, grinning like they just won the lottery, my heart tugs. Because those weren't just ads. They were magic. They were dreams. They were our version of wrapping paper. And somehow they made us feel rich. That afternoon, after the gift wrapping frenzy, the house had this quiet hum. Not silence, but something softer. Like the way a record keeps spinning at the end, just crackling faintly while you sit with the moment. My mom had finally sat down on the orange velour couch with a cup of Sanka, steam curling up into the dusty sunlight coming through the window. The kind of light that makes every dust mote look like a snowflake. My little brother had passed out on the floor, half covered in catalog pages, like a fallen soldier in the war of glitter and tape. My sister was in the kitchen painting her nails with Wet n Wild polish, flipping through a Tiger Beat with Eric Estrada on the cover. And me? I sat cross-legged in front of the tree, just staring at those lumpy, glossy packages we'd created. We didn't have much, but somehow, right then, it felt like we had everything. In the background, the TV played a rerun of Three's Company, the laugh track echoing through the living room. I could hear the faint bubbling of the crock pot in the kitchen. Mom had put on some sort of mystery meat stew with Lipton onion soup mix and a splash of Worcestershire, her lazy winter special, as she called it. Everything felt warm. Not just because of the heater humming like a tractor in the hallway, or the layers of mismatched Afghans on the couch, or the corduroy pants that stuck to your legs every time you sat down, but warm in the soul. That kind of warmth you don't notice when you're living it, only when you're far enough away to miss it. At some point, I remember digging through the leftover catalog scraps and finding the perfume section. I tore out a sample of Electric Youth by Debbie Gibson and rubbed it on my wrist, pretending it was the fancy kind of perfume rich girls wore in soap operas. My mom saw me do it and just smiled, didn't say a word. Isn't it funny how smells stay with you? I haven't smelled that perfume in decades, but if someone opened that catalog today, I swear I'd recognize it instantly. Just like I'd recognize the smell of Scotch tape and dusty tinsel, or the scent of that cracked vinyl from the fake leather couch, warmed by the sun. Later that evening, after dinner, We all ended up in the living room again, because that's what families did back then. There was no rushing off to bedrooms with tablets or shutting doors to scroll alone. We were all just there, half bored, half happy, completely together. My dad turned on Solid Gold and we sat through it even though no one really liked it as much as American Bandstand. But hey, it was TV, and we only had like 6 channels unless the antenna behaved. I remember Marilyn McCoo introducing a medley, and for some reason that moment, that specific show that day, that chair, stuck in my head forever. I was holding a mug of Swiss Miss, the kind with the sad little fake marshmallows that never really melted, and my feet were tucked under me like always. The living room smelled like a mix of stew, pine-scented air freshener, and that old heater with its burnt dust smell that somehow felt like home. Every now and then a car would crunch by on the frozen street outside and we'd all pause. Maybe it was the neighbor, maybe the postman dropping off a late package, maybe just some lost driver who didn't know our sleepy little road. And through it all, the presents sat there under the tree, glowing in the lamplight. Those catalog pages looked almost like stained glass, shimmering with color and story and hope. I remember tracing one of the pictures with my finger, some action figure ad, and wondering if that kid in the picture knew how lucky he was to be featured in the Christmas book. Do you remember the feeling of just staring at the tree at night? Lights blinking, reflections dancing on the tinsel, that low buzz from the cord plugged into an outlet that already had too many things on it? That feeling, like time stopped for a minute and all the worry in the world melted into the carpet? That's what that night felt like. December 7th, 1981. The day we wrapped gifts with catalog pages and felt like royalty. As the night wore on, the house started to settle into that familiar winter rhythm. Creaks from the old radiator pipes, muffled footsteps upstairs, and the occasional thump from the attic where we swore a squirrel lived, but no one had ever actually seen it. My dad had fallen asleep in his recliner, head tilted back, mouth slightly open, snoring like a motorboat. He still had his work boots on. Always did that. Said taking them off meant he'd get too comfortable and never wake up in time for the next shift. My mom was at the kitchen table, flipping through the catalog one last time, not even looking for anything, just flipping, sighing, sipping her cold coffee. She always said it helped her think. Sometimes she'd dog-ear a page with no real intention of buying anything. It was more like dreaming out loud. And me? I had grabbed a piece of leftover wrapping paper and in a page with a full-color ad for the Easy Bake Oven, and was writing my name on it in bubble letters. I don't know why. Maybe it was my version of signing the day, like carving your name into a tree so you remember you were really there. The tree lights were still blinking. Red, green, yellow, blue. The big kind, those fat glass bulbs that got hot if you left them on too long. Ours were probably from Woolco or maybe even WT. Grant back before it closed. They had chipped paint and buzzed when they blinked, but we loved them. They had history. My sister came and sat next to me without saying anything. She handed me a piece of cinnamon Trident gum and said, "Don't swallow it this time." We both laughed because she knew I would. I always did. In the background, Knight Rider had started. My brother was glued to the screen, making engine sounds with his mouth every time Kit came on. He had a Matchbox car in each hand, zooming them across the floor like he was part of the chase. Every once in a while he'd shout, "Michael, they're gaining on us," in the worst impression of David Hasselhoff you've ever heard. And that was our night. No big finale, no grand gift exchange, just comfort, just the sound of family existing together, like an old song you don't need to sing to still feel. Later we each took turns sneaking peeks under the tree, pretending to count how many gifts were technically for us. "That one's mine," I whispered, pointing to a box shaped suspiciously like a VHS tape. It wasn't. It ended up being socks from Sears, of course. "And that one too," I added, tapping a long, skinny package that I hoped was a baton, but turned out to be a yardstick my mom wrapped as a joke. My dad stirred just long enough to mumble, "Don't shake 'em. You shake 'em, you break 'em," and then slipped right back into his snores. Around 9:30, we finally started heading to bed. My mom kissed each of us goodnight on the forehead, even my sister who pretended to hate it. "Brush your teeth," she said, "and no more tearing catalog pages." She turned off the living room lamp but left the tree lights on, just like always. She said it helped the house breathe through the night. I crawled into my twin bed, the one with the holly hobby sheets and the squeaky metal frame that creaked every time I moved. My room smelled like old crayons and Johnson's baby powder. I could still hear Knight Rider faintly through the wall, my brother's voice too, narrating his toy car adventures under the covers. I lay there looking at the ceiling, thinking about that green Huffy bike, the Barbie styling head, and the Garfield alarm clock I circled in the catalog. I knew I wouldn't get them, but still, it was nice to pretend, and that was enough. Have you ever had a night like that? One where nothing really happened, but it still lives in your memory like it was the most magical night of your childhood? One of those slow, quiet evenings that somehow means more than the big holidays or vacations? That's what December 7th, 1981 became for me. A night wrapped in warmth, imagination, cinnamon gum, flickering lights, and the glossy pages of a JCPenney catalog, where everything seemed possible, and even the smallest gift could feel like treasure if you wrapped it with care. Block 5. Gentle realization, plus emotional memory anchors, plus building to the closing mood. The next morning, I woke up before anyone else. The house was still. That kind of silence that only happens when it's cold outside and the whole world is still asleep. I crept down the hallway in my thick socks, past the bathroom with the avocado green sink, past the hall closet with the broken door hinge that always made a click-click sound when it opened. I went straight to the living room, drawn to the glow. The Christmas tree was still on, just as Mom had left it, pulsing gently, softly illuminating the presents underneath like a secret waiting to be told. There was something about the early morning light mixing with the blinking bulbs that made everything feel sacred, like I was standing in a chapel made of shag carpet and catalog pages. I sat down cross-legged in front of the tree and just looked at the packages. Some were crooked. Some had corners where the tape had already popped loose. One had, "To Uncle Rick," written in red marker, directly on the picture of a kid modeling corduroy pants. But in that moment, I swear to you, I thought we had wrapped the most beautiful gifts in the whole country. Maybe even the world. That's the thing about being a kid. You don't see makeshift. You see magic. You don't notice what's missing. You focus on what's there. And what was there in that tiny room with the popcorn ceiling and wood panel walls was enough to make me feel like royalty. Eventually, my mom shuffled in with her robe and slippers, carrying 2 mismatched mugs of coffee. She handed me one, filled with mostly milk and a splash of coffee, my grown-up cup. She sat beside me without saying anything. We just stared at the tree together. "You know," she said after a while, "someday you'll look back at this and wish for it all over again." I didn't know what she meant at the time. I was 8. Wishing for things I already had didn't make sense to me yet. But she knew. Moms always know. Later that day, she let me help her wrap the last few gifts. We used the pages from the men's winter coat section, those stiff, muted colors with men who looked like newscasters posing by fake fireplaces. We joked about what we'd wear if we had catalog money. Mink coats, suede boots, silk pajamas. I said I'd buy her a gold necklace with one of those heart-shaped lockets. She said all she really wanted was a blender that didn't smell like it was about to catch fire. You ever joke like that with your parents? Not big, fancy conversations. Just soft, silly stuff that sticks with you longer than it should? Those were the best moments. No lectures, no chores. Just a catalog, some tape, and the comfort of knowing someone loved you enough to make magic out of scraps. That afternoon, I took a walk outside with my brother. It was cold, and the sky was still that washed-out winter gray. We crunched across the frosty grass in our moon boots, kicking clumps of frozen mud and pretending we were on a secret mission. We passed Mrs. Timaggio's house, the one with the plastic candles in the window and that weird nativity made from spray-painted milk jugs. She waved at us from behind her storm door, wearing the same blue curlers she'd worn every year since 1977. We walked past the old roller rink, which was already closed for the season. The sign had one bulb out, so it just read, Kate Palace. That place smelled like popcorn, Aquanet, and wet mittens, and it had one of those neon carpets with bright splatters that made your eyes hurt. I remember thinking how empty it looked without the music and disco lights, and somehow, that emptiness made everything feel even more special. I looked at my brother and said, "I hope we always remember this year." He didn't say anything, just nodded and kicked a chunk of ice down the sidewalk. Back at home, the living room had warmed up again. The radiator was clanging, the tree light still blinking, and the smell of something baking, probably Jiffy cornbread or Pillsbury cinnamon rolls, filled the air. Mom had turned on the little black and white TV in the kitchen, and The Price is Right was playing. I could hear the bell dinging and someone screaming they'd want a washer-dryer set. That sound, that moment, it felt like a hug from the past, like time had slowed down just enough for us to feel it, to really live inside it. You ever have a memory like that? One that sneaks up on you later in life when you're at the grocery store folding laundry, and suddenly you're 8 years old again, in your living room, surrounded by blinking lights, glue stick residue, and the soft rustle of catalog pages. That's the kind of memory December 7th, 1981 became for me. Years later, decades actually, I found one of those old JCPenney Christmas catalogs at a flea market in some small town in Indiana. It was sitting in a cardboard box labeled $1 each, wedged between yellowed Life magazines and a stack of old TV guides. I pulled it out like I just found buried treasure, and there it was, December 1981. The cover had two kids in matching red footy pajamas, holding up a train set with those exaggerated cheesy grins only department store photographers could get out of you. Their eyes were lit up like they were seeing magic. And you know what? They kind of were. So was I. I flipped through the pages slowly, careful not to tear the brittle edges. There were the Hot Wheels sets, the Light Bright, the Barbie Dream House, the Levi's corduroy jackets, the Casio calculator watch, the wrapping paper of our childhood, right there in my hands. And then it hit me. I wasn't looking at a catalog, I was looking at a time machine. All those pages, all those colors and fonts and oddly posed families. They weren't selling clothes or toys. They were selling moments. The kind that would sneak into your soul and stay there for 40 years. The kind that would carry the scent of cinnamon gum and electric heaters. The sound of Casey Kasem counting down the top 40. The feel of Scotch tape stuck to your fingertips and your mom's laugh echoing from the kitchen. I stood there in the middle of that flea market with tears in my eyes because for a second, just a second, I was back on the carpeted floor of our old house, wrapping a bar of soap in the picture of a toy I could never afford, and feeling like that gift meant something, because it did. That Christmas didn't come with big-ticket gifts or shiny gadgets. I didn't get the Huffy bike. I didn't get the baton. My brother didn't get the walkie-talkies he circled in red marker. But we got something else. We got to feel rich. Just for a moment. Rich in laughter, rich in togetherness, rich in imagination, rich in the kind of memories that hold you long after the toys break, the tree comes down, and the catalog pages fade to yellow. It's funny, isn't it? We spend so much of our grown-up lives chasing the feeling we once got from nothing more than a warm living room, a tired mom with glue on her hands, and a stack of glossy pages from a department store catalog. And I think, maybe, that's the point. Maybe it was never about what we had. Maybe it was always about how we felt. And on December 7th, 1981, we felt like we had everything. So if you've still got an old catalog stashed in the attic, or a faded photo of your childhood Christmas tree, or even just a memory, hold it close. Because those little things, they're the treasure. They're the real gifts. And if you ever wrapped a present with something that wasn't really meant for wrapping, a page from a catalog, a piece of comic strip, a brown paper bag with stickers, you already know what I mean. You already know what it means to make something beautiful out of almost nothing. And isn't that the most Christmas thing of all?